Ink Ribbon.
We once again return to Raccoon City and take a look at the characters of Resident Evil Outbreak, this time looking at one of the most underutilized characters in terms of strategy and healing. From ex-wife issues to one-hit kills, here are 25 facts about George Hamilton. George was the head surgeon at Raccoon General Hospital, the same hospital that Carlos visits in Resident Evil 3. George was a member of a charity group called the Raccoon Volunteer Corps. In the opening of Outbreak, you can see George contemplating and looking frustrated. It's implied that he was studying the T-virus from patients that were showing strange symptoms, which is also likely how he got infected. Even though George is a surgeon, he got his doctorate in virology alongside his friend Peter Jenkins, who you find dead in the Decision scenario. George is recently divorced, having separated from his wife in 1998, the same year that the outbreak happened. George is a collector of watches, as shown by the SP items he collects, which are all very interesting watches, including a watch shaped like a belly that gurgles, a puzzle watch that doesn't let you see the time until you solve a puzzle, and a watch that beeps anytime you move. Even though he and Cindy seem to have a lot in common, her love of Mr. Raccoon, the zoo's mascot, is not one of them, as he describes the mascot as a sniveling brat. George has a medical set, which gives him the ability to create any type of medicine in the game by converting herbs into healing items. Among the medicine that he can make are the following. A green herb makes an antidote, which cures poison. A red herb makes a hemostat, which stops bleeding. A mixed herb makes an antivirus pill. And lastly are recovery medicines, which are made with either a blue herb or a red and blue herb, and are the most useful of his skills. Not only are recovery medicines as good as green herbs, but they can also be stacked in your inventory. In File 2, he was given the addition of a unique gun called a capsule shooter. This can be loaded with the medicine George makes, which can be shot at your teammates, allowing George to heal people from far away. One really cool thing about his capsule shooter is that if you load it with an antivirus pill, you can kill a zombie in one hit, making all of the antiviruses you find extremely useful, especially on the harder difficulties. He can also instantly kill certain enemies with other pills, such as the scissor tails, by using an antidote. George's special ability is his tackle, which not only allows him to tackle while aiming, but also can be charged up. When he goes into the tackle animation, he is briefly invincible, allowing him to essentially dodge and counterattack if you time it right. Only in the Hive scenario, and only when playing as George, you can find recovery medicine bases in the treatment room. He also starts with a full map of the hospital, since he works there. George has a secret ability that isn't really ever mentioned, but he can actually gain more health from healing items than any other character. The Decision scenario is canon for George, with him heading to the university to meet his colleague and also helping to synthesize the daylight vaccine for himself and the other survivors. While many characters have two good partners and one bad one, George is a bit different. Cindy and Kevin are his good partners, Alyssa is a bad match for him, and on top of this, Yoko also doesn't seem to get along with him, often not listening to him or helping him during scenarios.
Yoko! Please help!
No.
George has two unlockable costumes, one that is sort of a nature costume, which also has his volunteer charity on the back, and the second one is a surgeon costume. Apparently, George's tackle was nerfed in Outbreak File 2 after players were using it to dominate player versus player matches. I have no way to verify this, but I will assume what I read on forums from 2006 were telling the truth. In the flashback scenario, there is a file titled Anesthesia Memo that can only be found when playing as George. If George is not in your party in the Decision scenario, you will find him mortally wounded near the pier and he will die. George typically speaks with a softer, kinder tone than the other men in the game, but does have one hilarious ad-lib directed at a hunter in Below Freezing Point scenario.
You're worse than my ex-wife.
George lives a life of luxury, since he makes pretty good money as a doctor, but he really enjoys the outdoors as well, often going for hikes and outdoor activities as demonstrated by many of his SP items relating to the outdoors. Peter Jenkins was writing a letter to George to tell him about the daylight cure, discovering that him and Greg were the only two people who knew about the research, only to be killed by Greg before he could write out instructions for George on how to synthesize it. George was hiding out with survivors in a makeshift shelter in the basement of the RPD before heading to the university, showing part of the RPD before File 2 was even released. Every Outbreak character has a secret pair ending, achieved by not taking the daylight cure or having any left in your inventory at the end of the scenario. George is paired with Cindy, with sort of a romantic ending where they hold each other as they watch the bombs hit Raccoon City and perish together. And that is it for this video. If you enjoyed it, then please fire a medicine capsule into that like button, and be sure to check out my other videos on characters just like this. I'm having a lot of fun learning about all the secret abilities and gameplay traits of each character, and honestly, it's just making me wish more and more that they would bring Outbreak back. I'm also curious how many of you played as George, because he seems to be the least popular character for some reason, so if you were a George main, let me know. I hope you have a great day, and until next time, I'm Kai Morgan, and as always, thanks for watching Ink Ribbon. And a very special thank you to all of my Patreon supporters and YouTube members. Your extra support means the world to me and helps me keep making content for you guys.